Does your bowling ball fit? What do you need to look for going into the new season as we get ready for the new season after all the shutdowns and everything? That's your topic for today's LTC podcast. All right, so we're going to get going. I guess first of all, thank you for joining me here today. We're going to talk a little bit about bowling ball fit, some of the things you need to look for, why we need to look for certain things, and how we're going to get prepared and ready for the new season. Some of us have already started the new season. They started leagues and stuff. Here in Michigan, I think they're all pretty much starting this week because of just now opening up. We weren't able to do much of anything throughout the season. Literally, bowling centers were completely shut down from the end of March until yesterday, until the 9th. So I know my local home center, Classic Lanes, is actually opening on the 12th. So Saturday, I will actually be bowling an event in Toledo on that day, and is also on the 13th. So be on the lookout for the live streams coming up on that. We will have some live streams for that. And I'm going to take the advice of somebody who had commented on one of my YouTube channel or one of my YouTube videos. I think it was the last podcast, and he said, why not do it live and record actual footage at the same time, so that way you can then go back and edit it and create an actual video with better quality. Because like I said, I'm pretty well at the will of whatever type of Wi-Fi I have at that time when it comes to actual recording, live streaming for the event. So that's not a bad idea. Maybe that's what I'll do. And maybe I won't show all the games, but I'll just kind of do like a highlight video where, people can go back and kind of watch some of the event through there. Probably a really good idea, actually. And I haven't thought of that. So thank you for that comment. Thank you. So your YouTube comments do not go unheard. They do not go unseen. And for those of you listening on podcast on Anchor, please make sure if you have questions or anything, I guess there's the ability to leave a voice message. So you can literally leave me a message right at anchor.fm on my podcast channel. You can leave me a voice message. So if you have recommendations of topics or anything of that sort, you can make sure that you can be heard over there, and I can respond to you on there. So make sure to head over there to my page, and you'll be able to do all that you need to do. But for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the fit. It's something that I've been working on for years. Talking with Keith Nestbaum over at Shopmakers Pro Shop yesterday, we talked about how I felt when I was bowling really well back in 2014. I thought it was crazy when I was bowling really, really good. Made the one national, not live, but it was a national ESPN show, and then a couple other shows, double show, a few more shows after that, extra frame shows and stuff like that. All in the year 2014, a little bit in 2015, but then that 2015 season is when things I got greedy, and I think that's kind of where my downfall was when it came to my fit. What I was trying to do in 2014, I made those shows, and then in 15 is when I missed like 6 or 7 straight shows. I mean, maybe it wasn't that many. I think it was maybe 5 or 6, but 5 or 6 different shows. I finished in the top 10, and I missed by like 30 or less pins, 50 or less pins, something like that. And it was getting frustrating that I was getting so close every single week, but not quite pulling through. And I couldn't figure out why for the most part. So I started thinking back, and I'm like, well, what in the world? Where am I struggling? Where am I coming up with the issues? And I figured out that it was actually later in the day. It was real late in the day when it got to the point where you had to stand left and really throw it right. Woo! Broom down. Where I had to stand left and really throw it right and still get your ball to go through the pins. Well, at that time, I was very forward with my hand. My tilt was 0, literally 0. So getting my ball through the front was difficult. Now, and getting the ball down lane and getting it to still go through the pins was next to impossible for me. And that forced me to shut my angles down because I couldn't create the big loop in the back part of the lane. I had to shut my angles down and try to get the ball to go through the pins. And when the lanes are breaking down out there and transitioning, they get super cliffed. And when there's a ton of oil in the middle like that, getting your ball to actually pick up without picking up too much is a very difficult thing to do. And those are the times that you'll see guys like Duke and Walter, the lower rev, Mike Haugen, those guys struggled when they got cliffed like that. And you got forced to play the middle part of the lane or left a fifth arrow ish. But yet you got forced to throw it to the right because that's where the friction is. And without the rev rate, without, super tilt, it's very difficult to get the ball to go through the pin. So that's when you would see guys like Belmo and EJ, Simo, Kyle Troop. Those guys would really start to dominate the field. And once the field got to that level, and I struggled with it. So my thought was, I need to figure out how to get more tilt. Anybody that's followed my YouTube channel, you've seen me go through the process. You've seen some of the earlier videos where I've talked about, creating a CLT grip or an offset grip and changing finger pitches and this and that. And I was able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. It took me, probably 6 months or so of playing around to get my tilt up, but I got it from 0 degrees to 9 degrees, which was great. The problem was once I was able to do that, everything else just kind of went right out the window. I had nothing. All of a sudden, I couldn't play the beginning games like I was able to before. I was not very successful in the beginning where I was good. So I then went from missing cuts or missing TV shows by 50 pins each time to missing cuts altogether because of not being able to bowl in the beginning games. Recently, that story basically brings me to where I'm at now. Over the years, everybody that followed me saw at Turbo, I was doing all kinds of different things. I drilled 100 different thumbs I thought it was a thumb issue, trying to get a correct fit. And all this time, it took all that experience, all that tribulation to figure out that it was actually a span issue more than anything. Now, don't get me wrong. I tried a few different span changes, but nothing dramatic. It was always just kind of raising a ring finger, dropping a middle finger, little stuff like that. And it was always by like a 16th or at an 1/8 of an inch at most. And this time I took my bowling ball into Keith Nussbaum and I'm like, look, here's what I'm going to try. Like it feels, this is where I struggle. I feel like I hang up on this part of my thumb, being the inside part of my thumb or the left side of my thumb. And when I try to change pitches away from it, it makes it to where I feel like I drop it and there's no in between. I use less bevel, more bevel. And he says, well, don't you think it would be, wouldn't that then if it's not a thumb thing where you keep trying all these different pitches, if it's not a thumb issue, don't you think it would be a span issue? And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? I think you're right. I mean, let's try it. I don't know. Here's what I'm going to do, Keith. I want you to just fit me up. So he took my hand and he literally, just kind of did all the as if I was a beginner bowler, took me and refit me and said, well, this is what I think your span needs to be. And I look at it and then I look at my span that it is now. Oh, coffee's done. And I look at it, as it is now. And I'm like, holy cow, that's like 3/8 of an inch difference. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's go with it, I guess. Let's give it a try. And so we drove one up and I just go a little bit further away, a little bit more reverse in my middle finger and a touch more reverse in my ring finger. And then I was able to go back to my old, just 3/16 reverse, 0 left and right. And I tried that and I went out and I threw the ball and it felt super awkward. I'm not going to lie. It felt super weird. And I didn't like it at first. It felt like my rev rate went down, but when I'm actually watching it, it doesn't. And now, I shouldn't even say now yet, but anyway, so I practiced with it a little bit and I just kind of stuck with it. I said, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I wasn't feeling the hang up on those parts. I felt like I could actually do what I wanted to do for the most part, but I feel like it went right back to struggling getting my hand around it again. And I'm like, you know what, if I have to sacrifice that in order to go back to at least making money and giving myself chances to make shows and stuff, I'll do that. I'll sacrifice. I'll go back to that. And so I did. And I went and bowled a couple of events and I had an awful weekend 2 weekends ago. And it was, I felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do completely with the bowling ball. And I struggled with feel. I struggled with touch, being able to get corners out in certain situations. So I got back home last week and I went down there again and I said, look, all right, so this actually corrected the issue of it not coming off my hand differently each time. The problem is I feel restricted. I feel like I can't do anything other than exactly what, the ball is going to let me do. So I couldn't get my hand around it. I couldn't change my tilt at all. And so I'm like, all right, well, here's what I need to do. I'm going to try and go with that same type of a thumb. I'm going to bevel it a little bit more, and then I'm going to go with more under pitch, so under the palm. So I went with an eighth under, which then basically got my thumb. If you hold your palm, straight up like this here, and I know podcasters you can't see, but if you hold your palm down with your hand straight up and you move your thumb underneath your palm, that's the direction of the pitch that I ended up going with. And the reason for it is then it helps me to it basically forces me to get my hand around the ball a little bit more. So it helped in that aspect. So I drilled it and I went and practiced with it. And all of a sudden I could get the ball around. I could all of a sudden get my hand to twirl around it nice. I could still feel the pads of my fingers and it was good. So I went and bowled this past weekend, and that's when I had a pretty good weekend. I finished third and first. I ended up winning on Sunday, which you guys already know about, which was pretty cool. But the problem that I had was I came home and my hand was sore. Like that inside part of my thumb, the opposite way that I pitched was sore, like almost like it was creating a new callus blister on that side. And I'm like, that's not good. My problem then became, well, how do I fix that? Is there something to do that I can fix that? And a lot of it was swelling. I've seen some swelling trying to, and it forced me to take my thumb out of the ball a little bit. So I didn't put it completely in the ball. And, but I was able to still do what I wanted. Now, granted, during bowling, it didn't bother me. When I was bowling, it's fine. It doesn't hurt, nothing like that. I just keep bowling and I'm good. It's in between breaks or in between days that when it gets sore, it takes a little bit of time. Anybody that's ever had a sore thumb, you jam it in there and it gets real like talk to Charlie Brown Jr. He knows what I'm talking about. He had that pain on the sides, and that's, his turned black. Like Charlie got to a point where his fit got him to where his thumb basically turned black from all the blood buildup and everything underneath his hand. So he's had to make some major changes to his fit, and I don't want to get back to there, but what I'm getting at here is when I was bowling good, this is the feeling I had in between blocks and in between days. I was sore, but I built up callus on that spot, so it wasn't that big a deal. And I know most people are going to say, if the ball hurts, which I say the same thing, if it hurts you, then it's not a correct fit. And I agree with that. So the moral of this whole podcast is to say, like, it's up to you. Honestly, how your ball fits, it's up to you. Sometimes you may have to sacrifice a little bit of pain to be able to do what you want to do with the bowling ball. Now, a good pro shop guy is going to get you out of that pain. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and create something after this weekend. Of course, I got a couple big tournaments this weekend. Which I did actually correct it a little bit. I took that same thumb and all I did was made it wider. So I practiced for a couple hours the other day while I was doing the flash reviews for Motive. And my hand, I don't really feel any tenderness today. So that's good. I think it was just maybe I needed a little room for my hand to swell a little bit, I think. So I opened it up just a pinch and it was good after that. So we're going to use it again this weekend and go bowl those couple of big events. I'm going to live stream those. So again, be on the lookout for them. But that's the whole thing on this is sometimes it's up to you when it comes to your fit. You can go and ask everybody, what do you think I should do? Here's what I got going on. And all of us, we can look at you and say, this is what I think you should do. This is probably what you need to do. But if you do it and it doesn't feel right and it restricts you and it doesn't let you do the things that you want to do, then you need to try something different, or you need to go to a point and maybe you need to sacrifice a little pain. Now, if it's causing you to the point where it's bleeding and it's almost to where you can't throw the ball, you don't want to do that. But if it's just a little tenderness, but you're allowed to do what you want, then I would just say, suck it up, I guess. Don't let it bother you too much. Just go bowl and bowl the best that you can, because at the end of the day, the touch and feel is what we're all about, what you have to have. If you can't feel the rotation off your fingers the way you want to rotate it, then you're kind of screwed. You're going to end up struggling in certain parts of the day that you don't want to struggle in, so creating the specific feel is completely up to you. Now, I always say the example of somebody walking in and it just looks like it's way too short The pitches are all crazy, but I won't say a word if they tell me that they like it. If they say they like the fit, unless they come in and they say, well, look, I'm struggling in this part, I'm struggling doing this. If they struggle in certain spots, then I can make a suggestion saying, hey, well, here's why I think you struggle this pitch or that, thumb hole size. We need to make some kind of a small change, and it will allow you, or it will help you to be able to do this type of motion with your hand. So when we do see stuff like that, we'll make suggestions. But at the end of the day, it's completely up to you how your bowling ball fits. If your bowling ball doesn't fit you how you want, you need to make a change. But if it lets you do what you want to do with the bowling ball, and even if it hurts, or if you feel a little bit of tenderness or pain, hurting is different. Tenderness or a little, a blister, or not a blister, but like callus buildup. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Some old school people will say, well, you shouldn't have any type of, your left thumb should look just like your right thumb. And maybe that's true. But again, it goes right back to you. It's what you want. It's what you're restricted from doing. If you can't do everything you want to do, then your fit probably needs to be changed. So keep that in mind. But I got to tell you, your comments, your YouTube video, your YouTube comments, I know people are probably going to start using the messaging portion of this podcast. For those who are listening on Anchor, you're probably going to start sending me messages on there, voice messages, which is fine. That's cool. They're heard. I do hear them. I do see them. Sometimes I will ignore. I don't want to say ignore, but I don't get to all the comments. But if I think somebody posts a comment that may be a little bit of misinformation or not quite correct, I don't want people to look at that and try to take what they say and kind of run with it, I guess. Where somebody was saying that, the numbering system that I have for the scaling of bowling balls, doing the Arsenal by the numbers, they were saying it, bringing up all these technical details, which I understand. I get it. I think it's a good idea to go into detail, technical side, maybe for a different group, but for the group that I have as an audience, for the most part, are very, most of them are, novice to intermediate bowlers. And even when you think about all those details, like, the RG, the differential, all that, people don't study all that stuff for the most part. Most bowlers don't really care to look at those numbers, really care to study those numbers, because it's just all about what the bowling ball does. You want to just be able to see what it does. When you talk to a lot of PBA, some of the top professionals, most of them don't even understand most of the numbers and the details behind bowling balls and all that stuff. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't understand completely everything. I do my studying on it and stuff. But there are, like, if you watch that EJ interview the other day, he literally came on and he said, well, I go by inches when I lay my lay my bowling balls out. This one is about 2 inches from my center of my grip. And he goes by that, so a little bit different than going by dual angles, where you're talking about two different angles and then pin distance, or when you're going by the storm buffer system, which is completely by inches, and 3 different angles there as well. So not all of them use that. You talk to a guy like DJ Archer, he's like, I use 2 layouts. I got to pin up one, I got to pin down one. And most guys are the same way. They're like, pin above the bridge, pin below the bridge. Now, granted, both of those layouts, you're going to see very, very, very little difference between them, but it's enough for them to where they can manipulate it and they can do what they want to do with it. So I think all the detail going into bowling balls is a good thing. It's a good thing to go into if you want to. And that's why I will do some like virtual classes that I talked about. I'm going to be doing some virtual clinics that will go into those details a little bit more in depth. But those will be for those specific type people who want to know more about that type of stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I keep on YouTube and all that, it's going to keep it basic. It's going to keep it, real simple to follow. That's the whole premise behind that scaling system, is to just keep it basic and give people, an idea of where these balls fit compared to each other. That's it. We don't need to go into details on why we did +6 or why we did -3 and stuff like that, other than we've got solid, hybrid, pearl. That's it. We're just trying to scale them based on the potential of performance out of them. And you can change them as you see fit, so just a little bit of an insight there. But that's kind of all I wanted to touch on today, was just fit. Now, I guess we can talk a little bit about pitches. So when you're thinking about your pitches and stuff on your thumb, the thumb is probably the more important thing. The thing that most people are making changes to is the thumb pitches. When you see a soreness on one side or the other, most people don't realize that when you're pitching your thumb hole to correct for a soreness, you actually pitch the thumb hole towards that soreness. So if you're palm down with your thumb down, looking at your hand, and you have soreness on that left side of your thumb, which is like the spot that I do, generally you would then start pitching back towards that direction. So a little bit to the left, away from your palm, would get rid of that soreness. But like for me, I tried that and I felt like I lost the ball too much. So I was trying different things with the thumb hole and it just didn't allow me to do what I wanted to do. So I have to kind of just deal with a little bit of tenderness on that side in order to make sure I can do what I want. Until I, can figure out how to drill a thumb that can get rid of that soreness and still allow me to do what I want. So it's a work in progress. It's just one of those things. So just remember, same thing with fingers. If you start to see a little bit of soreness on your fingertips here or on the back side or front side, you just pitch towards that direction. If you're starting to look at your nail and you're seeing some bloodiness or some bruising underneath, you need to pitch those fingers just a little bit away because you're putting too much pressure on them. So just keep that in mind when you're paying attention to either tenderness or soreness. And the other thing you need to really look at and pay attention to is the fingers being equal. You want to have equal pressure across both fingers. You don't want more pressure on one finger or another unless you're trying to change your ball roll. If you're trying to manipulate your ball roll in one way or another, you're going to see more pressure on one finger or another. Generally, when you feel more pressure on your middle finger, you're going to be your tendency is going to be to get around it a little bit more. And when you feel a little bit more pressure on your ring finger, the tendency is going to be to stay up the back of it more and keep your palm more towards the ceiling. So pay attention to those things. If you want to be more versatile and kind of want to be able to manipulate the pressure you're on your own, you need to make sure that the pressure on both fingers is equal straight across. Now that doesn't mean that your span needs to be straight across on both fingers because everybody's hand is different. You need to kind of pay attention. And if you feel too much pressure on that middle finger compared to your ring, you may need to either raise the ring a little bit or you need to drop that middle just a little bit. So just focus on these things when you're practicing the next time. And if you feel any of these issues, then maybe you should take it into your pro shop and see if you can't make a little bit of a correction. I know a lot of people are dealing with the plugged holes right now. I know he had 40 some odd bowling balls in there being plugged because everybody waited till the last minute to get their weight holes plugged starting the league next week. So pay attention to, I know there was some studies and stuff. I don't think it's going to change ball motion very much because, the weight of the bowling ball itself isn't going to, or the weight of the outer cover and core isn't going to do much to change the ball reaction. What you did was you took a drill bit into the core itself. So you changed the core a pinch. And even by adding plug in there, the core is still changed because the density of that core is a little bit different than the outer or even the resin or the urethane that you're putting in to plug that hole. So I wouldn't be too worried about your ball reaction changing much. If it does change, it's not going to be noticeable by the eye, I don't think. But if it does change and you don't like it, I guess that's your best bet, is to probably go in and get a new piece of equipment. Let your pro shop guy let your pro shop guy drill it up, specific to making sure you don't need a hole in it to get the ball reaction that you want. So head over to bowlerx.com and get all the stuff that you want, and then take it into your pro shop and get it drilled up. That's the easiest and best way to do it, in my opinion. Or if you have to, whatever, I don't care. Support your pro shop, support whoever you need to support in bowling. We just want bowling to continue to grow. But being with Bowler X, obviously, I would love for you to take the opportunity to go over to Bowler X and get your stuff over there. So make sure you do that. But until next time, guys, I'm going to head up on out of here, and we will roll out. We're going to do some more. Video and podcast on building an arsenal. Next time we're going to do Rotogrip. So we did Storm, we're going to do Rotogrip, then we'll do 900 Global, and then we'll move on to some of the other companies, including California Bowling. We're going to do Swag, Lordfield, all those types of companies. So be on the lookout. We're going to be doing all this stuff. But until next time, guys, I'm out of here. We'll see you later.